This is the Poco X4 GT, a mid-range phone that brings flagship-killing performance. Its main downside? An LCD screen rather than an AMOLED. So is it worth going for this phone over its AMOLED-equipped rivals? I'm Will for GSM Arena, and let's find out in our Poco X4 GT review. The X4 GT brings Poco's tried-and-true formula of premium features and a flagship-worthy chipset, packaged with a more budget-oriented build and camera setup. Compared to last year, there are quite a few changes feature-wise, and the looks are different too, with a matte rather than mirror-like back panel. The back is again made of plastic, and the frame is plastic as well. It's the compromise you'd expect at this price range, but the phone doesn't feel cheap. It is a bit on the hefty side though. One thing that is missing on the Poco X4 GT is IP-rated water resistance. Last year's model was IP53 rated. The Poco X4 GT's display is a 6.6-inch IPS LCD with a 1080p resolution, like last year. But now there's Gorilla Glass 5 protection instead of Victus, and there's also an upgraded 144Hz refresh rate. A refresh rate this high is hard to find in a mid-ranger, and this means that movement on screen is that much smoother to the eye. And it can dial down to even lower than 60Hz to save energy, depending on what you're doing. This display is sharp enough and can achieve good color accuracy. Plus you get support for 10-bit color, HDR10, and even Dolby Vision. But like I mentioned at the beginning of the video, many mid-range competitors have at this point switched to AMOLED panels, and that could be a deal breaker for some people. The contrast and black levels here aren't impressive even for an LCD. When it comes to max brightness, we measured 470 nits with the manual slider, and this can boost up to 600 nits in auto mode. It's good, better than last year, but still not quite enough for great legibility outdoors. One interesting decision Poco has made is to bring back the headphone jack this year. It was missing on the Poco X3 GT. There's also a pair of stereo speakers here for your audio, with Dolby Atmos support. They earned a score of good in our loudness test, and the sound quality is pretty good too, with clean sounding highs and noticeable bass.
I'm wide awake, but you're a nightmare.
You can wake up and unlock the Poco X4 GT with the side-mounted fingerprint reader, which is built into the power button. It's fast and reliable. And you can opt for either 128 or 256 gigs of storage on board. This isn't expandable though. The interface of the Poco X4 GT is Xiaomi's MIUI 13 based on Android 12. It's straightforward and pretty much the same as you'd get on all recent Xiaomi devices. If you'd like to dive into the specific features of MIUI 13, you can check out our dedicated video. Probably the biggest upgrade you'll find on the Poco X4 GT is the chipset. It's a high-end Mediatek Dimensity 8100, which is significantly more powerful than the Dimensity 1100 of last year's model. In benchmark tests, it smokes rivals which are running on mid-range level silicon. And there's more than enough power here for your multitasking and heavy gaming. And in addition to that, Xiaomi has improved the passive cooling system for better thermal management during those extended gaming sessions. The X4 GT did an excellent job in our throttling test, maintaining a high level of performance for a full hour and not even becoming hot to the touch. The phone has almost the same battery capacity as last year at 5080 mAh. It earned a very similar score in our battery tests too, with an overall endurance rating of 112 hours. The 67-watt capacity of the bundled charger hasn't changed, but the battery is now split into two cells which charge simultaneously, so you'd expect the charging speed to be faster. Plot twist, it's exactly the same. In half an hour we were able to charge the Poco X4 GT from 0 to 75%. And when it comes to a full charge, it's actually even slower than before. Finally, we've made it to the cameras, which are similar to last year's. It's a pretty typical mid-range setup these days, and includes a 64-megapixel main cam, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 2-megapixel macro camera. In good light, the main camera produces some nice-looking photos. There's a good amount of resolved detail, okay dynamic range, and colors are punchy but not over the top. Our only real complaint is that these are a little bit on the soft side, particularly if you zoom in to some fine detail like foliage. Portraits come out pretty good, with quite a bit of detail and sharpness. The subject separation can get tripped up by messy hair or complex backgrounds though. Shots from the ultra-wide cam are decent. There's a good amount of detail and lively colors. The dynamic range is limited though, and there is some softness, especially near the edges of the frame. Close-up photos from the macro cam are lackluster. The level of detail is limited, as you'd expect at the 2 megapixel resolution. Colors are washed out, and without autofocus, each shot takes some trial and error. In auto mode in low light, the main cam takes photos with good colors and exposure, well-balanced highlights and light sources, and detailed shadows. However, there's general softness and visible noise, even while the noise reduction takes its toll on fine detail. Night mode improves things by adding some sharpness and removing the graininess. These are really fast to process too. Nighttime photos taken with the ultra-wide are very soft, with narrow dynamic range and washed out colors. The night mode does help though, providing sharpness and livelier colors. Highlights look better and shadows have more detail. Selfies from the 16 megapixel front-facing cam are a bit of a letdown. They're too soft, with dull-looking colors. The dynamic range isn't great either. The Poco X4 GT can record video with its main cam in up to 4K at 30 FPS. This footage is sharp enough, with low noise and accurate colors. The dynamic range leaves more to be desired though. The ultra-wide cam is limited to 1080p resolution, and its videos are softer, with an even narrower dynamic range. So that's the Poco X4 GT. You get a pretty solid set of features here, the most notable being the powerful chipset. Plus there's solid battery life and good sounding stereo speakers. The display is nice too for an LCD, and it has that 144Hz refresh rate. The problem is, many people prefer an AMOLED these days, and you can find one on most of the competitors. And there are a couple of other shortcomings to consider too. There's no waterproofing this year, and the overall camera quality is just alright. Still, there is one other way to attract the customers, and that's the price. And for now, it looks like the X4 GT is quite a good deal. So if you don't mind the drawbacks, you can still find quite a lot of value here. Thanks for watching guys, stay safe and see you on the next one.